Here in the Northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks where kindred souls gather together to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as the February Room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for composite development fly rods and accessories. 40 years of Kiwi ingenuity and graphite technology, now available at cd-fishing.us or your local CD USA dealer. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And remember to go fishing. Here's your host, the Carnops, and this is the February Room.
Welcome to the February Room. Today, my guest is Jeff Perin, a guide, instructor, and fly shop owner of the Fly Fisher's Place in beautiful Sisters, Oregon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Lauren. It's good times.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and we were just talking a bit earlier before we started recording that you have owned the Fly Fisher's Place for 30 years. And I know that you have some fishing stories for me today, and I can't wait to hear one.
Well, obviously this is actually my 35th year in the fishing business and 30 years of the owner of the shop. And of course, there's a long history of crazy stories. But, and listening to a couple of your podcasts earlier, just out of interest in podcasts, I love to listen to podcasts, especially fishing podcasts. I listened to a couple of friends of mine, Brian O'Keefe and John Hazlett.
Yes.
And John had a great story about losing his boat on the, I guess it was on the Rogue River. And so I have a good story about losing my boat on the Deschutes River. Do you want to hear that one?
Yes, please do.
All right. Well, it's kind of an embarrassing story, but as everybody that has a boat knows, there are those that have lost a boat and those that will lose a boat. And this wasn't my first lost boat experience, but certainly my worst lost boat experience. And every year in September, we host a big group of ladies that come and stay at Blackbeard Ranch, and they cumulatively do probably around 40 guide trips for the week. It's a really, really big event for us. And there's this one lady, particularly wonderful person and kind of a cranky old gal. I love her to death. We cuss at each other. She's a good angler, and we have a great time together. In fact, she's been to Cuba and Belize with us, and she's just a great lady. So this is kind of sad that this happened to her, but on the other hand, probably wouldn't want it to have happened to anybody but her.
Yes.
So there's a section of the upper Deschutes below Wickiup Reservoir upstream of Bend. The Deschutes is kind of well known for the lower 100 miles. It's the area below the dam, and it's the area that gets all the steelhead run and the big red sides. But the upper Deschutes, at one time, before all the dams were in and the reservoirs were in, was one of Oregon's greatest trout fisheries. It still has years that it's pretty good. And so for one of Mary's trips, I said, hey, let's go up and float the upper Deschutes. And, up in that section, there's no real shuttle service. You kind of have to self-shuttle or figure out a way to get your car from point A to point B. So I had called a friend of mine, Ron, that morning and said, hey, buddy, would you take half an hour this morning and help us shuttle my car? And he said, yeah, I can do that. I've got some things going this afternoon, but I can do that. So we drive up to the boat ramp. I don't know why I did this, but I was helping Mary get her waders and boots on and get the boat ready. And it was a boat ramp that I was a little bit unfamiliar with. And I took the safety chain and the winch rope off before I launched the boat, thinking that the ramp was like super, super easy slope, and then I would just kind of back down, get out of the truck, and guide the boat off of the trailer with my hands on the gunnel, and But as it turned out, the ramp was a little bit more steep than I thought, and it had kind of a little drop off. And so as I was backing down, Mary and Ron, my friend that was shuttle driving, were sitting there watching, and I was backing down, and the driver's side wheel of the boat trailer kind of dropped into this hole, and it literally launched my clacketcraft out into the middle of to the Deschutes. And they're looking at me like, oh, what just happened? And I get out of the truck. I'm like, oh my God. And so I start running. It's a marsh up there, and I start running with my waders and boots and my rain jacket, because it was pouring down rain too. And I'm going through this marsh, and I'm like praying, oh, please, 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 wind, just blow that boat over here. And when I realized that the boat is not going to blow towards me, and there's no way to get it without drowning or dying, or possibly dying, I'm like, holy crap. So I called the sheriff's department. They have a Marine patrol. And I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the guys that are on the Marine patrol from guiding a lot and being up on the lakes, especially. They're out there pretty frequently doing safety checks and that sort of thing. So sort of embarrassing to call the sheriff's department in my situation, being a guide. And anyway, I get to the end of the marsh where it kind of goes into this cliffy type area, and I scramble up that, and there's a trail through Lapine State Park at this point. I'm on the trail. I'm completely out of breath. I'd called Ron and Mary on the phone to have them drive down to this area that I might be able to get the boat, and they're driving around looking for it. It was really a cluster. And by this time, like nearly at heart attack stage, not only from the stress of losing my boat, but literally from the physicality of chasing it through a marsh and up a cliff. And finally the boat stops, and I ran into this jogger on the trail. It was a young woman jogging along on the trail, and here I am in waders and boots, sweating, panting. I'm like, can you help me? And I think she thought I was like Jack the Ripper or something. So she steered way, way, way clear of me. And so I kind of scrambled from the trail over to the edge of the cliff through the trees, and saw my boat had stuck in a big root wad underneath the cliff. And I'm like, oh, thank God, at least it's stopped. I mean, at least it's not going to be going down river infinitely to the falls that are, down there below the drift that we're taking, and should be safe. So the first sheriff that shows up is a really nice guy, Forest Patrol, Deschutes County Sheriff. And he looks at it and goes, yep, that's a predicament, but here's what I think we got to do. He was going to rappel me down the cliff into my boat. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm not much of a heights guy, nor have I ever rappelled, and I don't think that's going to happen. So shortly thereafter, the first Marine Patrol guy shows up, and he had this giant jet boat that they used to patrol the lakes, and the river up there was too shallow to get the jet boat in. So he tried a couple of times and tried in a couple of different boat ramps, but just couldn't do it. And so they ended up calling search and rescue. So we were supposed to launch at about 8 a.m. By time they got two guys in for the Deschutes County Search and Rescue who are volunteers, by the way, great volunteers. They mobilized at the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office in Bend, got a Zodiac with a motor, got the Deschutes County Sheriff Search and Rescue pickup truck, got their dry suits, their helmets, their life jackets, ropes, and all the rescue stuff that they thought they would need to get my boat safe. And anyway, they came and motored downriver, and they said as soon as their wake from their boat hit my boat, it had dislodged again from that root wad and started floating away from them. So one of the search and rescue guys had to go swimming after my boat. They got in it, hooked it up to the motorized Zodiac, and pulled it up to the boat ramp. And actually, it was just after about 12:30. So nearly 4.5 hours later, Mary and I got to start our guide trip. A fairly long float. I think it was around 12 miles that we had to float. And so in the fall, we're running out of daylight. Fortunately, we had a really nice afternoon mix of blue-wing olives and pale morning duns, and she caught quite a few fish on dry flies, and I had to row out in the dark. But I would tell you that after dropping off Mary, she went back to Black Butte and told that story to all the ladies in the group. That was the greatest story of the week. So she won the story for the craziest. She won the award for the craziest story of the week, and I won the award for being the dumbest guide of the year, I think.
And I bet you she still doesn't let you forget about the time about the boat.
Every once in a while, that story still pops up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It makes me laugh too, because I like to run too. And I can only imagine, like, every time I'm running, you kind of have these scenarios, like, say someone comes up to you, what would you do in this scenario? And I couldn't imagine this girl's probably running, and this guy with waders, like, help me. I think I would be like, why didn't I bring my pepper spray? Like, run like the Dickens.
Yeah.
I'm sure she tells everybody too. She's like, one time I was running and there was this crazy person with waders asking me to help him. And
even been even more great if I would have got sprayed with pepper spray.
I actually carry like those small little cans of pepper spray. So I bet you now maybe she's listening to the podcast and she's like, oh man, what a jerk I am. Like, I should have helped out that poor Jeff.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about earlier, I've obviously visited Bend, and everyone kept telling me, hey, you need to go to Bend. That place is insane. Beautiful mountains, great rock climbing. And I went there, and not that Bend isn't beautiful, but I was kind of shocked about it not being as right up against the mountains as I thought in my mind what Bend was going to look like. And Justin took me. He's like, hey, get in the car. I want to show you a really cool town that I love. And it's called Sisters. And I thought, okay, well, I've heard about Bend. I'm going to imagine Sisters as kind of like mountains far away. And wow, totally wrong. Sisters is beautiful. I mean, the mountains are huge. And what I loved about the name Sisters, isn't it because the two mountains are they're supposed to be sisters, right?
Yeah, three actually. The South, Middle, and North Sister, and they were named Faith, Hope, and Charity. And they kind of loom over our town along with Broken Top, Mount Jefferson, Mount Washington, and Three Finger Jack, and then a very tall butte called Black Butte is also in the horizon. So it's really pretty, very mountainous. Tons of we're in the Ponderosa here, and then as you head down towards the Metolius, it gets into Ponderosa and fir and some spruce, and it's really, really pretty. And the Metolius is our home water. It's about 20 minutes away from the fly shop, so that's really close. But yeah, we're all forest out here and really close to those mountains.
Yes. I mean, I always think it's kind of amazing that you can go from Bend, which is, kind of desert. You have a lot of sage and allergies are really good there. And then to go to Sisters and it feels like you're in a totally different state. You were just talking about the Metolius, and, what makes Metolius so special for you as a guide for 35 years?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things to start with is that there isn't any guiding on the Metolius. It's a place where you're on your own, and the Forest Service closed it down to guiding, I'm told, back in the 70s, kind of before my time in the industry. But they, as part of their wild and scenic river designation or their plan, they got rid of guiding in a couple of areas around close to town, close to Sisters or Bend. The Middle Chutes and the Metolius were two areas that they didn't allow any guiding. And so there is one little short area of river on a resort that we work with. They've got about close to a mile of river frontage. It's called the House in the Metolius, and we can guide there, and we do a lot of guiding there with their guests. But for the rest of the river is about 27 miles long. It's a spring creek, and the upper portion of the river, which is open only in the summertime. It opens up just a little bit before Memorial Day on May 22nd every year, and closes down on November 1st, or October 31st is the last day you can fish it. It's very, very Spring Creek-like, very small stream, super clear water, gentle flow. But the Metolius it ends up being quite a big river. It would probably remind people more of a big Montana freestone coming out of the mountains in Missoula than a spring creek like you might see over in Livingston or something. It takes on a lot of tributaries, some of which are also spring creeks. Some are snowmelt rivers that come out of those mountains that are nearby. And it also has a number of other pretty major springs that fall into the river at different points of its course down to its confluence with the Deschutes. And so it has kind of three distinct sections. We sort of categorize that. I actually have a map that I made at the shop, and it's actually printed in Montana, and it shows all the fly fishing only stretch and a little bit beyond that, down below the fly fishing only boundary. And then, so what we do is when we sell that map, we kind of talk to people about, okay, this is what we call the upper river, this is what we call the middle river, and below here is the lower river. And they've all got a ton of game for fly fishing. And in different seasons, you're going to see, different hatches. That's probably one of the things that attracts me to the river the most. I'm a very passionate technical dry fly angler, and so love the a 3 or 4 weight rod with a 16 to 20 foot leader and a 6x or 7x tippet if necessary, and a little cripple or a merger. That's the type of fishing that the Metolius is, and so that's one of the reasons that I'm drawn to it so much.
And now a brief message from our sponsors. High-performance graphite shouldn't break the bank. Check out the Tamer brand of fly rods for composite developments, available in 5, 6, and 8 weight. An unbelievable value at $199, Tamer 4-piece fly rods deliver smooth cast and precise presentation. Our Tamer kits include a Fly Lab pulse reel and weight forward fly line. A river-ready kit for under $300. Go to cd-fishing.us or visit a CD dealer in Idaho, Montana, or Wyoming. And remember to go fishing.
With the Metolius, because it's not guided, do you find that the habitat to be a little bit healthier?
I wouldn't say so, because from a guide's perspective, I think that guides actually bring a lot to a river system. In terms of kind of picking up trash, which we don't see a lot of on the Metolius, but we do see people bending the rules on equipment, and see people bending the rules on keeping fish, which the Metolius is strictly catch and release, and so while we don't get a lot of that kind of shenanigans done on the Metolius, there is some. And from my perspective, there's I think a guide could help kind of keep that from happening so much, because we take such pride and such ownership in rivers that we guide on, that we would probably protect it more. But from that standpoint too, I can think of a good 24 really wonderful and lovely local people that the Metolius is their home water too, and
Yeah.
so they're constantly on the lookout. I mean, we actually just had a big case here down below the fly fishing only boundary. They just caught a guy from one of the local communities that had been poaching bull trout out of the Metolius for years, and he was posting his posting and boasting his accomplishments on his Instagram page. And anyway,
What a dummy, right? I mean, isn't that the biggest dumb move you could do? I mean, I don't understand that.
pretty close, yeah. Anyway, he got caught. Oregon State Police game wardens nailed him, and he's in big trouble. And the case is I don't think resolved yet. I think it's still going through the courts, but he is, certainly going to lose his fishing and hunting privileges for a long time to come. And hopefully, hopefully that damage done is behind us and we can move forward. But I know some people that saw him and then looked him up on Instagram and kind of figured it out, and they were part of the solution in getting him busted. So yeah, good stuff, man. I mean, that's what we're after.
Oh, I used to edit a show called Montana Game Wardens, and it was on the Sportsman's channel, but basically following wardens and making sure that people were following the rules. And a lot of it was, also on fishing and people, going on the Blackfoot with glass and, and it's just about protecting the habitat. And if you can't follow the rules, then you just shouldn't be out there fishing
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I was looking at your website and you were very good about, you just put out your fishing report. You're like, as a reminder, please make sure you know your water and know the regulations. And as anglers, that is your responsibility. Every time you go in the water, you're like, hey, what fish am I allowed to eat? Or what fish can I harvest? Am I even allowed to harvest fish? So I think you do a really good job with reminding on your blog, on your website, The Fisher's Place, to remember that is your responsibility as an angler. When you sign your fishing license, you're signing your ability to understand the rules of the water.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I get, that's one of the little frustrations that I have after all these years of dealing with the public is just, people not knowing, the geography of the place that they're in. They don't know the names of the bridges. They don't understand. I mean, in so many cases, people don't even understand which direction the damn river is flowing. I mean, come on, you gotta be smarter than that if you're going to use the outdoors, and stuff. So yeah, but that most people are great and most people get it. And, I feel like, it's part of my responsibility to help, remind people of what the rules are. And I know a lot of people use my blog, my fishing reports, pretty religiously. I mean, they use them. I try to update them in the summertime. It's every week for sure. And then, in the wintertime and December, January, February, it might be every, 10 to 14 days or so, but because the information just doesn't change as much. But I mean, in the summer from middle of March until, the end of October, God, fishing conditions can change daily. So I feel it's really my responsibility to update that information for people every 6 or 7 days, and I do, and people love it, man.
And I guess with you owning the Fly Fisher's Place for 30 years, what has been your goal or your mission of success? How have you continued to have a fly shop for 30 years? Because it is fun and it's exciting, but it is very difficult too.
It is difficult. And, I think, I think one of the things that I tell people is I'm too dumb to do anything else. So, and, I mean, honestly, there may be a little grain of truth to that, but I think a couple of things, I'm pretty stubborn. Like I'm not going to sit there every day and grind it out. But on the days that it needs to be grinded out, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it done. And so I don't feel like I'm ever at really a burnout phase. I had maybe a little bit of a burnout about, I don't know, it was about 16 years ago. Big relationship change in my life, got divorced and sort of was questioning everything, like, do I want to do this fly shop thing anymore? Maybe I want to get in the ski industry. I got really into master ski racing for a few years, and I remember I have this really cool business manager. He's 78 years old. He runs my office, and he's been there since 2001. I remember him giving me advice. He's like, Jeff, this is your nut, man. This is what you do the best, and you should, just try to get back in it, because this is what you do so well, and it's going to take you a lot of places. And that's true. I mean, it has taken me a lot of places. It's taken me around the world. I can't tell you how many times. I mean, I've been to Argentina and Chile, just for example. I've been to those places 18 times now, and
wow,
probably about the same to Belize. And I've been to Russia and New Zealand and Tassie, and I've been all over the place fly fishing. And I feel really lucky. But I feel one of the things, Lauren, I think that's been really great for me, about 10 years ago, I bought one of the 7 Deschutes National Forest permits to be able to guide on the Fall River, the Upper Deschutes, where I lost my boat, and lakes, which is where I do the majority of my guiding. And when I bought that permit, the regulation, I have 4 different guide permits from different agencies, and that permit is the only one that requires the owner of the permit to guide a certain percentage of the trips that the shop does. So I can have up to 8 guides working on my permit along with me, but I'm required to guide 33% of the trips for however many trips that we do.
Wow!
So it kind of made me reinvent myself a little bit about 10 years ago, in that in the summertime, well, I say the summertime, in the fishing season, I mean the non-winter season, I am kind of constantly out in the boat on the lakes guiding. I guide at East Lake and Paulina Lake and Crane Prairie and Hosmer mostly. Those are the ones that I hit most, and they're all local, within an hour's drive of the Fly Shop and Sisters, and really good trout fisheries. And it's just something that has become very, very exciting for me. A nice change of pace from being in the Fly Shop for all those years, since 1986 when I started in the Fly Shop. I did guide back in like the late 80s and early 90s, and the Justin will probably remember the guide service. Craig Lacey, he had a company called Whitewater and Wild Fish, and they had one of the permits that I have for the lakes in the Fall River, and they allowed me to guide the Fall River and Hosmer Lake, and those are the only 2 places that I was allowed to guide. 2 really easy places, and I couldn't drive. They made the customer drive, just that like, I was too young, and maybe it was too much of a liability. I think they knew that I was responsible enough, because I was probably more responsible then than I am now.
Because you're super nervous, like, I gotta keep this job.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just like a really responsible young guy, so anyway, but yeah, that's been kind of, for me, that's been kind of one of the things that's kept me even more engaged recently, is this this newfound love of guiding, and especially this newfound love to being on the still waters. These some of these are pretty big lakes. They're 1,000 to 4,000 acre lakes, and learning more and more and more every year about how to catch fish on these lakes, and learning techniques from amazing anglers around the world, and right here in my backyard. That's been probably one of the things that's really kept me in it. And I think there's one more answer to the question. I mean, honestly, in those 30 years that I owned the Fly Shop, I for sure should have gone out of business twice. One of the years was the first year I owned the shop, and the Teals, Harry and Dee, who I bought the store from, kind of helped me through those mistakes of the first year, which were very expensive mistakes. But
Like what kind of mistakes were they, if you don't mind me asking?
over ordering, and
Hmm.
not having the ability to pay the bills for all the stuff that that I'd ordered. That was pretty much the main thing, and then kind of getting in trouble with not being able to, pay the bills. Then you
Hmm.
can't reorder stuff. So maybe we were out of stonefly nymphs, and you didn't want to be out of stonefly nymphs if you're guiding a lot on the lower Deschutes. So those sort of things. I've had a couple of bad years that we had tough financial times, and
Yeah.
I just chose to be like, okay, yeah, it's really, really freaking bad. I was going to say the other word, but I won't, because
Yeah.
it's a nice for families. It was really, really freaking bad. And, but yeah, it's March, and I know that by May we're going to start making money. And if we can just kind of talk to everybody that we owe money to. And it's been, those were tough years, and I don't know, it could happen again. I think, these days, Sisters and the Bend area has grown so much. I just can't even
Hmm.
tell you how different in the last 3 or 4 years, how different tourism is now than it used to be. I mean, we used to be so dead, so quiet, and especially in November, the first 2 weeks of December, and then all of January, all of February, and then maybe the first week or two of March until spring vacationers started coming around. It's just not like that anymore. We get days this time of year that are very similar in sales to a June or July day, and uh,
Wow. So
so
COVID really hasn't had any effect on the fly shop for
it's
you.
it's becoming a little bit easier for sure, to run the business, just from the standpoint that the area has grown so much with new people moving to the region, and then a lot more tourism, from people that have just moved to the Pacific Northwest in general, and we're an easy day drive or even a couple hour drive to where they've relanded from,
Hmm.
wherever they came from. You see license plates from Texas, and certainly a lot from California, but all over the place, New York, every place. People are coming here because of the lifestyle. So yeah, I mean, COVID was really, really scary. We got off the plane from Argentina in LAX on March 1st, with kind of the real first beginnings of the news of COVID. And like a week and a half later, I didn't know how we were going to make it through the year. But to be quite honest
Yeah.
with you, um, in a lot of our categories, we kicked ass.
Yeah.
We were shut down for guiding, basically from mid March until the middle to end of May, depending on which permit. We weren't allowed to guide, so we got hit really hard with kind of a loss of revenue on guide trips. I actually, got some PPP money, and put, 4 or 5 of my guides. I say 4 or 5 because all 5 couldn't commit at the same time for the entire 6 week period.
Yeah.
I had them all working in the shop doing things. We remodeled the bathroom, we remodeled the fly tying room, we put in new
Wow.
screen. We resealed the roof. We just did a bunch of cool little projects, and they got paid, a nice hourly wage. And so while they weren't getting what they would have got for guiding, they were getting, they were able to survive, and I think it made everybody happy, and comfortable, and kind of set us up for what ended up being a pretty darn good season until the September fires hit on Labor Day weekend.
Well, and it's also like a sport. Fly fishing is something that you can do 6 feet apart. So it
Yeah,
kind of is, if you're looking for a new hobby, I mean, fly fishing is totally something that you'd like to do. And I like to hear that. I mean, during your downtime, you really didn't have downtime. You were like still working on the shop, being even better than what it is.
Yeah.
I heard you said you had a fly tying room. Is there a special tie that you like to fly that you like to tie out there?
Well, I'm actually at my house sitting at my fly tying desk right now, and I'm looking at the flies that I've tied the last couple of nights, and I think I have fly tying ADD. It's really hard for me to tie more than a few of the same thing before I have to move on to something else. But I've been working on a lot of chironomid patterns, pupas, and then a lot of beetles and some Euro nymphs. And I've got this really beautiful little cut wing or burned wing calabatus that I'm staring at right now that I tied last night. So I don't know, if you press me to ask me what my favorite pattern is, yikes, I would probably have to say like the Comparidon, with the option of putting a Zealand tail on it and turning it into a sparkle dun. Craig, I have a few fly tying heroes. Craig Matthews out of West Yellowstone is one of them. His sparkle dun and X caddis and Iris caddis and knockdown dun. Those are the types of fly. When I'm river fishing, those are the types of flies that I really like to fish. And so when I'm lake fishing, which is kind of more of my, I love lake fishing, but I tend to take the stillwater game more into my career and on my days off I go fish the Metolius or the Deschutes.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
separate the two.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Not that I don't fish lakes on my days off. I definitely do, right. and dream about it. But a lot of time on the Metolius on my days off. But for stillwater flies, I really follow kind of what's happening in British Columbia. I know that Phil Rowley's not actually from British Columbia, but he fishes there a lot. I think he's from Alberta or Saskatchewan or something. Super knowledgeable, great. You got to get him on the show, actually. He's amazing. Him and Brian Chan, their patterns, and just sort of follow that kind of, BC Kamloops area fly patterns. Balance leeches came from there. A lot of the best chironomid patterns came from there. That's kind of the direction I go with flies for sure.
If people are wanting to start to reach out to you, over at the Fly Fisher's Place, or want to read more about your blog, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Well, it's pretty easy actually. They can go to the website, which is www.flyfishersplace.com. No apostrophe on the S on Fishers, just flyfishersplace.com. Or they can call me at the shop. If it's okay, I give the number here. It's 541-549-FISH, which is 3474.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I love it.
So and then I'm really good about answering emails. I'm online a lot and good about answering emails and not generally. If I have time, which usually I make time or find time, I'll answer an email with pretty detailed information. So, I just kind of feel like it's part of my duty to share information like that. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I love, I don't have too much knowledge when it comes to fishing, but when anything I can provide, I love giving tips and my own experiences. Jeff, do you have Instagram or Facebook?
Yeah, we sure do. Instagram and Facebook are both under the Fly Fisher's Place. So yeah, easy to find on both. Tend to do a lot of Instagram posting in the season. And a little less this time of year in the winter. There's just not as much to share, but yeah, we're on both and enjoy being on there.
Yeah, I actually wanted to post something on Instagram that was like my fly fishing outfit for the winter time, and it would just be me in my pajamas in bed. I'm not one that likes to be out in the cold and stripping wet cold line and 20 degrees. I'm not that hardcore. I want to be, but I have my limits. Well, before we sign off, I know you have some more stories because you've obviously fished around the world. So I'd love to hear one more for the road.
Well, I'll tell you one that kind of came to mind when we were talking earlier. I don't know. This isn't really an international story, but it's the story. It's the story of a day that I think is really really special to me. So, like I mentioned earlier, that permit that I got to guide on the lakes that is issued through the Forest Service office in Bend, and there's only 7 of them, and you have to find somebody that is willing to, part with theirs, and then you go through a transfer process with the special uses coordinator at the Bend office. And you don't actually pay the Forest Service. You pay the person that owned the permit for, essentially their, blue sky, and then you take over the permit, and that's that. So there was this really great guy named Craig that had a permit, and he was a school bus driver over in the Portland area during school year. And then as soon as the school year wrapped up, he and his wife would come over. They'd pull a trailer up to Crane Prairie Reservoir, and one of them would pull the trailer, as I understand it. The other one would pull the boat, and they'd just kind of set up camp there for the summer season and guide, as much as possible, if not every day. And so I met Craig, and he allowed me to be one of his 8 employees on his permit for a few years. And then he said, hey, I'm thinking about selling it, and I guess I asked him if he would sell it. He said, yeah, I'm thinking about selling it. I just kind of want to really retire. And he said to me, I could sell this so easily to somebody else for so much more money. I'm going to sell it to you because I really feel like your heart is in it. And I like the fact that you're a lifelong Oregonian. You grew up fishing these lakes since you were 3 years old. He just loved that part of the essence of this story. And so anyway, the day that I met him in Portland, I was dating this lady named Tina, who worked at Portland State University. I left my sister's house in West Portland, drove up Barnes Road to a Starbucks coffee shop and met Craig and gave him a cashier's check for his business. Drove up and over the hill into downtown Portland on Northwest 23rd, went and bought an engagement ring for Tina, and then drove across town over to a marina on the Columbia River, and bought a motor for the new boat that I was having built for my guide service. And it was maybe one of the greatest days of my life to set myself up for future success. I got a permit, I got a wife, and I got a badass motor out of the deal. So I don't know much better than that, but it was a pretty great day.
That is so incredible. And I imagine probably one of the most expensive days that you've had to drop a lot of money in one day.
I think indeed it was one of the most expensive days I've ever had just in one day. Yeah, for sure. But fun.
Oh, yeah. It's fun when you get like those moments where you're like, this is, like you said, you were setting up your future and you really did all in one day. You're like, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in. All poker chips are in.
Yeah, for sure. It was great. And then can I tell you one other thing that
Yes.
Because I kind of wanted to respond to Brian O'Keefe's interview that you did here. So Brian and I have been friends for a long, long time, and I actually worked for Brian a little bit when I was helping him organize stuff in his office, and it was great. And he'd been a long time friend, and not that we're like super super close, but whenever we reconnect, it's always really easy and fun, so I think one of the greatest compliments, and maybe also one of the reasons of my long success in the business, is Brian once told me how how much he looked up to the fact that, like, I wasn't so singularly focused on the fly fishing business
Mm-hmm.
as I was really nicely rounded in a lot of things. Like I'm, I like the business, but I also really, really love to fish, and I really, really love to ski, and I play a little golf, and
Mm-hmm.
I like going hiking with my wife and the dogs, and I'm not just focused on one thing, and it was probably one of the things that stuck with me most, was that compliment was also a reminder of how to have a successful life. I've just sort of taken that along, my whole life. I just think it's important not to just be focused on one thing, but to broaden it out, to experience different things, and to enjoy lots of different things.
I think that's such a beautiful way to end this podcast. I think it is. You just can't take, if anything, throughout all of this coronavirus and the pandemic and election, is that you just really have to make sure that you're keeping yourself well balanced, not in just one thing. Because if that one thing doesn't work for you, you just have to have other things that you can find your balance on. So no, very well said, Jeff, and I really appreciate talking with you. And hey, maybe we can just have a big old reunion, a podcast reunion with you and Brian O'Keefe.
Yeah,
Make our own stories and at least try not to lose any boats.
and John Hazlett, who
And John Hazlett.
exactly. Yeah, that guy. He's not good with 5x tippet. I'll tell you that. He needs zero.
I know. I should have him teach me how to spay cast. Get that off of Justin's list of things to do. But
He is amongst the best at that. So if you do get that lesson, you will excel, I'm sure.
oh, I'll have to make a video of it. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate you taking the time. And anyone who's over in Sisters, Oregon, please go visit, checking out the new bathrooms and the new fly tying and the new roof.
Can't wait. Yeah, we'll keep it clean for you.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.